Well, thank you for joining us for another busy night of news here on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. I am Brandon Hudson. Day 37 of the government shutdown. We're really seeing the impact, both with federal workers going unpaid and SNAP benefits in limbo. We're talking with financial advisor Jim Simasko about how you can stretch your money as the shutdown drags on. And staying on the topic of money, Treasury Secretary says parts of the economy, they're already in a recession. Oakland University Associate Professor of Management Michael Greiner is in Studio C with what to watch out for and where we're headed. Plus, we are talking about the future of Detroit from someone who has served it before, former City Council member Sheila Cockrel, on what she feels needs to happen to keep the progress going under the new mayor. The election is where we're going to start tonight because we're getting a better look at how many people showed up to the polls as the Motor City elected its first new mayor in more than a decade and made history by electing its city the first female mayor ever. Now, if you've watched the polls, you know there's only one way to do this, and that's, say it with me, go by the numbers. First, the basics here. There are roughly 520,000 registered voters here in Detroit, 115,000 ballots cast Tuesday. That's around a 22% turnout. Those numbers on their own, they're kind of dry. So let's put this into context here, something that many of us love. That's sports. You might remember we did this right after the primary here. The number of Detroit voters in this election is 6 times more than the capacity at Little Caesars Arena for a hockey game. It's nearly 3 times the capacity of Comerica Park, slightly less than double the capacity of Ford Field, and 1.5 times the capacity of Spartan Stadium. Now, if you're wondering about the big house here, let's look at the number right here. Voters would be left out in the parking lot, 7,900 of them to be exact, which kind of sounds like a pretty fun tailgate if you ask me. So while that 22% turnout number might be low, this gives you a pretty good visual about how many people turned out in Detroit this year. Now to the government shutdown, which is expected to cause chaos at airports all across the country, including right here at DTW. Traffic there and at 40 other airports is being reduced starting tomorrow over safety concerns, and air traffic controllers are strained because of the shutdown. Now, they've dealt with staffing shortages as workers go without pay, and some are calling out. This is something that understandably has passengers at DTW preparing for the worst.
Well, if we get stuck in Miami, it'll be a lot warmer than Michigan.
Hoping we get out. We already were delayed twice today, so hopefully we checked our bags, so hopefully we can get out, and then if we get stuck in Florida, we'll be good there.
I appreciate the TSA workers and what they're going through and what they're doing for us.
It's got to be a lot. We're grateful for them. Thank you, guys.
I do have TSA pre-check and clear, so normally if I do kind of procrastinate, I'm safe, but for a lot of people who don't, they'll probably have to add 3-4 extra hours before they fly, which could disrupt people's lives, job schedules, taking care of children, pets, things like that. So it's disheartening to hear that we're going to run into such issues.
So at least those passengers are looking at this glass half full. And like we said off the top, this is day 37 of the shutdown. President Trump wants Republicans to get rid of the filibuster, but the Senate GOP says that's not going to happen. Like we've said every day since this started, neither side is backing down from their demands.
I think that there is no reason to surrender now, every reason to stand firm.
We can't go another week. The Democrats need to do the right thing and open back up the government. They know real people are paying the price.
Republicans feel very helpless about the situation because, as we've noted, there is really nothing for us to negotiate.
I think everybody has to understand what the mood in the country is, that people want fighters.
In a major update involving the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP, a federal judge orders the Trump administration to find the money to fully fund it this month. They have until Friday to make plans through SNAP, but this is unlikely. The roughly 1 in 8 Americans will see the money that quickly. It comes a week after 2 judges order the Trump administration to use emergency funds to pay for the program. But the administration says that those funds would have only been covered by 60% of the maximum benefit. That would have left some of those recipients with nothing. But whether it's federal workers going without pay or people on SNAP not having the money they need, this is a tough time financially right now for people. Elder law attorney and financial advisor Jim Simasko is joining us tonight to talk about how we can stretch out those funds as the government shutdown shows no signs of ending. Jim Simasko, It is good to see you as I try to fit in this chair here. It's a little tight squeeze there, but we're here. We're making it happen. How are you?
Happy to be here.
Welcome to the Pulse.
It's fun to be here. I'm happy to be here.
Day 37. First of all, did you think we would get this far in this shutdown?
I'm an optimist by heart, so I was hoping we wouldn't get this far, but right now I don't see an end in sight. I could see another 30 days going on.
Look, there's a lot of people, and as we get close to the holidays, they are worried because they're not getting paid. And they want to know, do I need a dip in my rainy day fund? And if so, how much do I need to get? So what is your advice for a lot of people watching this?
Well, number one, they have to prioritize. You know, you have to cut out the extras if at all possible. You know, stop with the Starbucks or the fast food. You really need to tighten the belt at this time of year. And it's good. That's good advice for everyone. Yeah. You know, it's the federal workers that are feeling the crunch right now, but it could happen to any of us.
How important is it? Because we often hear, even we're not in these kinds of situations, get a savings account, maybe have 2 of them. This really seems like that kind of advice would be very critical right now. Am I safe in saying that?
Absolutely. Too many people are paycheck to paycheck. Too many people are not putting away X amount of dollars or X percentage of their income for retirement or a rainy day fund like this. And I understand it. You know, you have kids, they have needs, you have, you know, your loved ones, and you want to lavish them. But it's really important to take a look at your budget, have a budget, and make sure you're within your budget at all time.
You're an optimist, so what kind of hope do you offer a lot of people at this time?
Tomorrow's going to be a better day, and I think everyone's going to pull together. There's a lot of wonderful people in our community that are willing to help their neighbors. You know, so I am very optimistic and positive about that. But you know, only time will tell.
As far as looking at money matters here, what kind of conversations should these families be having at the kitchen table?
It should be about saving and preserving. You know, maybe the kids aren't going to get 5 presents at Christmas. You know, maybe they're not going out to the movies as much or out to dinner. That's the kind of conversations. Our parents, your parents, you know, we come from Depression era parents or grandparents, and they knew the value of a dollar and they knew how to go without. A lot of people today, they don't know that, they haven't experienced it. So they really need to be frugal and save money.
Do you find that it's a lot busier for financial advisors when we're in these eras of uncertainty?
Yes, absolutely, because people are more in tune about what they're going to need in the future. They realize that the federal governments may not be there to give handouts or be there for, you know, to help them if they need it, and they have to rely on themselves for the future. Everyone should be responsible for themselves. The government should just be a safety net. Although Social Security and other federal benefits have been promised to us, the government does owe us that. But for extras, we should be responsible for ourselves.
All right, Jim, let's say I'm sitting down at a table.
Yep.
I need to put together a checklist, a safety plan for the next however long, because this may stretch out into Thanksgiving, into Black Friday, into, you know, the holiday season. What am I putting on my checklist to make sure that I stay above water as we head closer to the new year?
Well, number one, you have to work on a budget. You know, what is your budget? And then you need to prioritize. Priority should be your utilities, your food, gas, things like that. And then you look at the extras too. Now, at the same time, if you don't have the money coming in, you could talk to your, you know, the utility companies, your mortgage company, the car companies for the car payment, you know, and tell them, hey, I'm having a problem. I'm not getting paid. I'm a federal employee. The money will be coming. And a lot of times those organizations will work with you. The worst thing you could do is ignore it. The worst thing you could do is just go on spending as if your paycheck was there. Or, you know, jumping into credit card debt, which is a terrible hole that people, you know, sometimes crawl into.
So what you're saying is do not be afraid to seek compassion from a lot of these companies.
You know, and if you're in a situation where you're still working, don't be afraid to help your neighbor. You know, by myself, you know, I participate more in canned drives and food drives now that, you know, I see what's going on. And if people are, you know, have the benefit of having extra, you know, don't be afraid to help your neighbor. Now's the time to do it.
Jim Simasko, tomorrow's a better day.
Tomorrow's always a better day.
Thank you for coming here on The Pulse.
Thank you.
No problem.
Have a great day.
Hey, you as well. All right, so we're going to stick with money theme, but we're going to have a broader focus on the economy. Parts of it are in the recession. We're going to take a closer look at which ones and where we're headed next. You're watching The Pulse. You're right here on Fox 2. We're back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here to talk about how parts of the economy are really already in a recession and what to watch for, Oakland University Associate Professor of Management, Michael Greiner. Michael, it is great to actually see you in person.
Yes,
we have numerous conversations on Zoom, so it's good to see you in the studio. How you doing?
Great to be here. Yeah, thanks.
So you reached out to us about this situation here. So explain for a lot of our viewers, because when you hear the word recession, things start to get tense. Add into that a shutdown that's going on. People aren't getting paid. So what do people need to know about this?
Well, number one, recession kind of is generally referred to as 2 quarters of negative growth. So when you look at the gross domestic product, if it's going up, you're in a positive period. If it goes down, then you're in a recession over a certain number of quarters. Now that's kind of a shorthand. In actuality, there's an organization that determines when recessions happen. They take more aspects into consideration than just that. But at least it's kind of a good shorthand. And I think the reality is that we are actually in recession in a couple of industries, and particularly manufacturing right now, for example.
Is this something that people need to be concerned about from the standpoint of sometimes when you hear recessions, it also leads to job losses?
Yeah, well, I think right now we actually are seeing the impact on jobs. For example, we're seeing kind of a real freeze in the labor market right now, where people know that it's hard to find new work. They aren't leaving their jobs. They're not getting the raises that they were hoping for because there's kind of not that competition for jobs. And if you lose your job, then you can really be in a tough spot right now. So, we are seeing the impact on the job market right now as a result of that.
I think for a lot of people, the benchmark appears to be 2008, that recession.
That was really bad.
Where are we in that spectrum?
Yeah, we're nowhere near that. You know, I think it's worth noting that at this point, I think the reason that the Treasury Secretary brought this up is because of the fact that essentially we've got the administration trying to pressure the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. You know, by lowering interest rates, they essentially goose the economy a little bit. Now, the Federal Reserve, on their part, are kind of concerned about that. You know, and in fact, Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell had a press conference where he said, we're going to step back. We might not have any more rate cuts this year. And the reason that he's saying that is because of the fact that, number one, we're receiving conflicting signals about the economy. On the one hand, it seems like spending is still pretty good. On the other hand, we are seeing some impact on the labor market, and that's of concern. And so the Fed is kind of trying to balance both those things. And things are made even harder for them by the fact that there is this shutdown. So they're kind of flying blind now. They don't have a lot of data available to them. So I think that you have, on the one hand, the administration kind of trying to pressure the Fed to essentially take some steps here. That being said, though, I think that they have a point. And the point is that our economy at this point is basically bifurcated. You have, on the one hand, you've got tech and you've got AI, really, artificial intelligence. And that is booming right now. In fact, I read that as a percentage of the total S&P 500, the Standard & Poor's 500 index right now, tech and AI is as large a percentage of the total amount of the index as it was back before the crash in 2001. So it really gives you a sense that right now, could we be on the verge of a balloon that's about to burst? Right. Could be. But that being said, though, the rest of the economy, when you look at it, manufacturing, we've seen negative readings on that. Many other industries, certainly travel has been impacted by the shutdown. We're seeing a lot of negative impact on industries that I think really raise some concerns that the Fed has right now.
A couple things I want to pull from what you just said here. First, with the Fed rate, is lowering that, is that an end-all be-all solution, or is that something that plays a small factor in what we could talk about here.
No, it doesn't. It is not an end-all be-all solution. And that's part of the problem here, which is that the Fed has two jobs. Okay, number one is to get control of inflation, and the other one is to try to keep the jobless rate as low as possible. So the problem is, by adjusting the interest rate, you impact one positively and the other one negatively. So say they reduce the interest rates, which could potentially increase hiring in the job market. That'll also be the type of thing then that increases inflation. So they kind of have to balance it where they're constantly trying to adjust it so it's not too hot and it's not too cold.
Second thing I want to ask you is, we are nearing the season where people spend a lot of money on a lot of holiday gifts, on Thanksgiving food, but we're also seeing some people not getting paid. So is this something that where the holiday season may factor into either helping or keeping steady with this recession?
Well, something you have to remember is that the Fed understands, and really all of government understands, that there are kind of these cycles that we have within the economy. And so sometimes you'll see where they'll talk about adjusted inflation rate or the adjusted employment rate. And what they're doing there is they're essentially adjusting it based upon the season that we're in. You know, kind of looking at what historically you'd expect and how it compares to what you'd historically expect. So is it likely we'll have more people hired as a result of the holidays starting? Of course we will. You know, people are going to be spending money. You know, there's going to be more hiring as a result of that. How will it compare to other years, though? That's really the big question.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have you on as we get deeper and deeper into this holiday season, maybe in this recession. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and thank you for informing our viewers on what's been going on. Michael Greiner, good to see you, man.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to turn to the Motor City's future right now, well, right after the break. Former City Council member Sheila Cockrel with the incoming administration, what they have to do to keep this progress going. The Pulse is back in just 3 minutes. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. It's The Pulse, here to dive into the future of Detroit. Former City Council member Sheila Cockrel. Sheila, it is good to see you. How are you?
Very good. Good to be with you, Brandon.
It's been a busy week for you.
Yes, it has.
You've had time to rest up?
I am. I'm good to go.
Well, good. We appreciate you coming in after a busy 48 hours.
Right.
So, look, first of all, just your impression. You know, Detroit elects its first female mayor. What do you make of the history that's being made here in the city?
Well, I think it's really important history. I mean, in the entire life of the city, we've never had a woman mayor. Right now, we now have, beginning in January, a woman mayor, a woman city clerk, and a majority female city council. So it is now we're not holding up half the sky, we're holding up the whole sky.
There you go.
And of course, it's going to be at a time when challenges are going to be facing the city that are not of the city's making.
From getting a seat at the table to basically setting up the whole table, setting up the chairs, and setting up for everybody else. We talked about voter turnout right after the primary. And I think at the time it was, what, 14%, which was still, you know, relatively high compared to previous years when we didn't have an incumbent. But to see 22% or near that, were you expecting that number, or were you expecting?
I thought it was an improvement over the general in 2021. And it was an improvement over the primary. I think we need to put this question of turnout in a context, because it becomes kind of a conversation about Detroit that I think's not a fair one. In general, across the country, no more than 30% of people vote in off-year elections. Why are they off-year elections? It was a conscious effort made by the progressive movement back in the 1900s to separate out local elections from federal elections that were done along party lines. One of the unintended, I can hope, consequences was to immediately drive down turnout, particularly to drive down turnout among ethnic groups and African American folks over the years. So that's a context for why we have this off-year election. Personally, I think we ought to explore the notion of what are the pros and cons of returning local elections to the presidential cycle, have it all at the same time. But so the 22% is a step up. I think it's a reflection of interest. I've not seen data yet, so this is conjecture. But it's a part of that is driven by the excitement around Mayor-Elect Sheffield. entry into the campaign. I think that's going to prove to be a factor, it's my sense. And also a really concerted effort has been made by many groups, many of the online media, local media groups, to get information to voters, including the Citizen Detroit, my group, to get voters the information they need to make informed decisions. I think being informed is tied to deciding to vote.
So if this is 22% and we're looking at an off-year election,
yes,
next year is a big midterm election.
Correct.
What do you hope? What do you see happening for 2026 if the voter turnout was where it was for this year?
It'll be better. Will it be what I would like to see at a 50, 60, 70%? Probably not, but it is going to be, I think more and more people are paying attention in ways that we haven't seen in a long time in this country. I mean, I point to California, but when you stop and think about it, people in California came out to vote about an idea. Mm-hmm. They weren't coming out to vote for a person, because we generally tie elections to, personality, right, to celebrity. So there's something going on in the electorate, in the country that I think we'll see also reflected, and beginning to see reflected in voter behavior for Detroiters.
One other thing I want to ask you about, and we had talked about this right after the primary, a debate that goes back generations, downtown versus the neighborhoods here. That was often talked about with Mayor-Elect Sheffield. That was talked about with her opponent, Solomon Kinloch. What would you like to see under Mayor-Elect Mary Sheffield's administration to bridge these two entities together?
First of all, I think we need to get clarity that in the Duggan administration with with Mayor-elect then President Council Sheffield, much greater emphasis has been put on direct investment in the neighborhoods, and that can be seen when you look at sort of the rebirth of some of the 5 major arteries of the city: Grand River, Michigan Avenue, Gratiot. I mean, things are happening. Is it happening fast enough? No. Does it make up for years of benign neglect or active disinvestment that goes back generations? No, but it's moving in the right direction. But if you notice, Mayor-elect, I got to get her titles all straight.
You got time.
Mayor-elect Sheffield has put together a process to engage the community in setting the priorities for her first 100 days. There's going to be a community survey. There are going to be community civic engagement sessions. She is establishing an approach to governance that is rooted in transparency and accountability and making sure that voices are heard. People are going to vote more when they believe their voice is being heard.
We got about 45, 30 seconds here. You've been in the city. You got Citizen Detroit. Is there a sense of optimism or hope after this election?
Absolutely. I mean, there's hard work ahead. There are going to be challenges, those we know, many that we don't. But I believe that the mayor is going to put together a team that will meet the moment and meet the challenges and continue the forward trajectory that the city's on. Well,
I know you look forward to seeing that transition, as do we. Sheila Cockrel, Citizen Detroit, former city council member. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good being with you.
Hey, likewise.
Sure.
All right, well, that is the Pulse for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I am Brandon Hudson, and as always, it is good to be with you. We'll see you next time.